Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Quick Connect call. My name is Will Hooten. I'm a business consultant with the Penn State SBDC. And today our guest is Mark Stiving, who is the Chief Pricing Educator and has more than 25 years leading, coaching, and educating businesses through the lens of pricing and radically different approach from other business experts. Mark has different company-wide pricing initiatives worth hundreds of millions of dollars in incremental profit. He started and sold 3 companies, improving his championship pricing skills in each one. Mark's passion is teaching the power of pricing. He evangelizes pricing at major conferences and has conducted over 400 days of corporate training around the globe. Mark also writes about pricing and value in his first book, Impact Pricing, Your Blueprint for Driving Profit. His second book, Win, Keep, Grow, How to Price and Package to Accelerate Your Subscription Business. And his third book, Selling Value, How to Win More Deals and Higher Prices. Well, Mark, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you, Will. I guess I should have written fewer books, so that would have been easier for you.
No, good. So, Mark, I guess to start off, I was thinking, we have different approaches in business, right? We have business to business, B2B. We have B2C, business to consumer. And I'm sure there are different tactics and ideas, but I'm sure there's also overlap, kind of like a Venn diagram. And it seems like after reading your first book on impact pricing, that it's value. They're basing a price off of value instead of having, here's my fixed costs, variable costs, and just doing like 25% more than that, right? But maybe there's a better approach on value. So I was wondering, could you define that for us, please?
So I'm going to define the word value for you, and I'm going to give you the best definition. Although in my last book, Selling Value, I wrote a whole chapter just on the definition of value, because there's so many different definitions of value. So it could be economic value, and in the world of B2B, economic value means how much more profit am I going to make you? Am I going to make my customer? There could be consumer value, and you could think of that like economic value for consumers. We actually don't have a way to measure that, so economists use this phrase we call utility. Utility theory. It's a weird concept, but it's okay. And then probably the value that I love is customer perceived value. So it doesn't matter how much money I'm actually going to make you. It matters what you believe before you buy my product.
Interesting. So this customer perceived...
I'm not done. We got to get to the single most important definition of value.
Yes.
And the single most important definition of value is the one that I think of all the time whenever I say the words value-based pricing. And that is, what is a customer willing to pay? So if you think about, this blue shirt for a second, how much do I value this blue shirt? Well, it's really hard for me to say, look, I value it, $100, $500, whatever it is, until you say, well, how much would you pay for this? And when you can figure out how much I pay for it, I would be willing to pay for it, then you know how much I actually value it. And so this is true for companies, it's true for consumers. It's the one definition that I love that goes across all situations. Now, there are other definitions of value. We just covered some of them. But if we think of value as what's a customer willing to pay, then it makes it much easier for us to think about pricing and selling value.
Interesting. So I don't know how to really necessarily jump into this the best way, but if you're a startup, and maybe we could pick an example, but I'm thinking whether it be a tech startup, maybe you have a new device that takes the health of a tree, its nutrients, if it has a disease or whatnot. But then you could also go with like, well, what if you just sell different arts and crafts, jewelry, maybe you're a restaurant, so many different variations to go off of. But if a business is starting off, what advice would you give them for trying to figure out that value? Where do they start?
Yeah, so we're going to use the answer that it's a customer's willingness to pay. We never go ask a customer, how much would you be willing to pay for this?
Okay.
What we really want to do is go listen to a customer and understand what their problems are, what are the things they value. In the world of B2B, this happens to be much easier because in the end, it should always come down to how much money am I going to make my customer? We should be able to we should be able to find a way to turn almost anything into additional profit for our customer. In the world of B2C, this is much harder. So then we're going to start thinking about what is it that our customers truly care about, and can we make sure that they understand that we solve the problems that they care about. And so I'll give you a great example. I love solar panels as an example for consumer business. And the reason I love it is because it's this numerical financial. I can make a financial decision that says I'm going to make more money if I put solar panels on my roof.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a huge portion of the population that couldn't care less. I mean, it's nice to make more money, but they really care about saving the environment. They really care about using the solar energy as opposed to burning fossil fuels. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm selling to that person, I'm not walking in there saying, hey, I'm going to save you $100 a month on your electric bill. Instead, we're walking and talking about how do we save the environment? How do we save the world? What is it that a customer truly values when they're making a decision? Now, I'll be the first to tell you that it's really hard to put a dollar value on saving the world. Right? Some people are going to say, yeah, I'll pay for that. Some people are going to say, no, I won't pay for that. But that's really the goal, is for us to be thinking about what is it that our customers truly value and what do they care about.
Interesting. So at the SBDC here, we talk a lot about customer discovery, and it's asking, important questions like trying to drill down to figure out what the problem is. Are they even trying to solve it? Have they paid for other solutions in the past? How big of an issue is it? So it seems like it's something along that idea where you have to actually talk to customers. You have to get out of the building and go find these potential buyers and having a discussion with them. And you had mentioned not to bring up the price. What would you actually pay? So I guess it's you're putting on your detective hat and you're asking pretty much just to walk through your day, or what kind of questions would you ask these folks?
Well, most of the questions I would talk about is what are the problems you're trying to solve?
Sure.
Right. If I have a list of problems that I think they might be trying to solve, I might say, hey, is saving money on energy important to you? Mm-hmm. And they say yes or no, or, yeah, maybe, or, so I'm starting to get a feel for it. But here's the question you can ask, right? Whenever you ask the question, how much would you pay for this? People play a mind game with themselves. It's like, oh, well, if I tell him $100, he's going to charge me $100. So I'm going to tell him $50, so he charges me less. But instead, ask the question, how much do you think other people like you would pay for this?
Ooh, okay.
Right. And so it somehow puts enough indirection that you're more likely to get a reasonable answer. Now, you're not going to turn around and charge this customer. This is a research project, not I'm negotiating with you type situation.
Sure.
But as a research project, that question works really well. It turns out, and your listeners can look this up on Google pretty easily, or on Wikipedia pretty easily. Look up Van Westendorp's price sensitivity meter. It's a set of 4 questions that you could go ask that are a little more complicated than what do you think other people would pay for this? And it's been proven since the 60s to give you a reasonable answer to the question of what people would pay. But I have to say that's just the beginning of the story.
Okay.
Because different people would pay different amounts.
Sure.
And what we have to do is start to understand, what do different people care about? How important is different things that they care about? So it is not an easy thing to just go ahead and ask 20 people and say, oh, I'll average those numbers and that's my price.
Mm-hmm. Because you could have certain amounts that are in those different segments, if you will. Larger portion that are much more price sensitive. I'm assuming once you're doing your customer discovery and you're looking at maybe your market size, that whenever you're looking at that, maybe you come off with thinking about breaking it off into different segments of their mentality on how they make those purchase decisions. And so would you be looking at their disposable income? Maybe your competition gets thrown in there too. What other things might you want to consider?
Yeah, so I can't give you the answer to that because every company, every situation is going to be different, but I can give you an exercise to go figure it out.
Perfect.
I love this one, is list 10 of your customers, 10 different customers, and then on a scale of 1 to 5, how much would that customer be willing to pay you?
Okay.
And so this is just you making guesses. I think this customer would have paid a 5, and this customer was super price sensitive. They would only pay a 1. And now go through and take a look at the 5s and the 1s or the 4s and the 2s and ask yourself, what's different? Why would these people pay us more and these people would pay us less? And what you might find are the answers to what you just said. It might be disposable income. It might be, oh, these people compared us to competition and these people didn't, or this competitor was involved in these deals and this competitor wasn't involved in these deals.
Right.
But the exercise gets you thinking about what are the things my customers truly value and they'd be willing to pay for.
Gotcha. Okay. So what you do is there's this approach, and you've gone through your list of different questions, you've aggregated it, you've analyzed it, however you do that, but then you come up with that 1 to 5. And then you take it the next step of like, oh, well, there's seems of these 5s, here's how I would categorize them. Of these 3s and 2s, let's say, they don't have this that the 5s had, or they have these other problems. Maybe that's what it is. And so your product doesn't fit their problem as well as the 5s would. I see. So it's not necessarily like, oh, I have to look to like the demographics and all that. That all kind of comes together after you've done your research. You've come up with your 1 to 5s, you analyze that, and then you start asking those other questions. So then that's how you kind of piece that part together, I guess.
Yep. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to play a detective here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan of quantitative research. Let's go grab a bunch of research. But I got to say that you can get really, really far just by doing this qualitative research.
Sure.
Right? If you understand 10 different customers well enough that you can answer those questions and make wild guesses, it will get you a long way towards making good hypotheses on why some people would pay more than other people.
Interesting. Okay. And this process could be applied in multiple industries and whatnot, because like I'm just taking a wild stab. What about a restaurant? Like I think of a restaurant as extremely price sensitive, but should your enchiladas be $12 or $15, right? And whatnot with that, but still that entrepreneur, that CEO, that person making those decisions still has to go through pretty much that process you just mentioned, right?
Absolutely. But so Will, I'm going to ask my own question now, if that's okay with you.
Go right on ahead.
Because this is one of the most important things to think about when we think about how our customers are buying our products.
Okay.
And that is, are they considering a competitive alternative for this decision or not? And understand the information they're looking for, their level of price sensitivity is very different based on those two answers. So if I am not looking at competition, the only thing I'm looking at is what's the value of solving the problem. And I can tell you that people are not price sensitive.
Okay.
Something besides price is driving that decision.
Sure.
On the other hand, when people are comparing me to a competitor, all of a sudden it's, well, how much do you charge? How much do they charge? What's the difference in features? How much do I value that difference in features? So I'm really answering the question, is the more expensive product worth it? And people become very price sensitive when they're making that which one decision. I call these will I and which one, right? Will I buy something in the product category? Yes. Which one will I go buy?
Okay.
People are not price sensitive when they're making the will I decision. They're very price sensitive when they're making the which one decision. Now, the reason I brought that up with restaurants is because think about the decisions people are going to make. So the first decision people make is, will I eat out tonight or not? Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're not price sensitive. Yes, I'm going to go out to eat tonight. Got it. Okay, which restaurant am I going to go to? So now price is actually playing a little bit of a role. What level of restaurant? Am I going to go to a fast food place, a sit down, Applebee's kind of place? Am I going to go to a super fancy restaurant? What's the level? I got to choose my restaurant. So they're making a which one decision, and price is important in that decision. Mm-hmm. Now you've gone in and sat down in the restaurant. Right. Now they're only making a will I decision, right? Even though they get to choose between multiple different entrees, they're all my entrees. Mm-hmm. I priced every one of them.
Right.
And so people tend to be less price sensitive. And we're thinking about what's the decision they're going to make once they're inside my restaurant. Now, I might have a few really inexpensive things so that the people who are super price sensitive and want to show up to my restaurant, this is the dollar menu at McDonald's, right?
Mhm.
I want to make sure that those guys are served. But if you're not buying off the dollar menu, you can pay me $5 for Big Mac, and that's totally okay. I'm going to make a lot of money on that.
Right.
But you've walked into my store. And that's really important for us to be thinking each step of the way, what decision is our buyer making and how is price part of that decision?
Yes. Wow. That makes a lot of sense, that you have to put yourself in their shoes and figure out each step of the way. Wow. What are their decisions, pros and cons, substitutions, all that. And interesting. So
Okay, can I tell you a quick story, if you don't
please
mind?
do. Yeah,
Yesterday I had lunch at Qdoba, and I wasn't sure if this was going to be true or not. But earlier in the week, I saw an ad for Qdoba. By the way, I eat at Qdoba quite often just because I like the food and it's convenient.
Yeah. Oh,
But I saw an ad for Qdoba that said free guacamole and queso, and I was like, really? That's pretty cool. So my wife and I we go to Qdoba, and I'm looking at the board, and no place does it say free guacamole and queso. And behind the counter, the lady would ask, do you want queso? Do you want guacamole? And I'm thinking, well, are they going to charge me for it? Are they not going to charge me for it? I don't know.
yeah.
And so before I left, I talked to someone and I said, is the queso and guacamole free? And they go, oh, yeah, the queso is absolutely free. The guacamole, the first scoop, is free. Now, here's why I love that story. They advertised free queso and guac to get me into the store. When I'm making a which one decision, where am I going to go eat? Oh, I could get free queso and guac at Qdoba. But once I'm in the store, I'm only choosing between their products. They're not advertising, hey, free stuff. They're advertising, buy these things that we have. And if you happen to have been brought in because of the free queso and guac, we'll sell it to you. Right? We'll give it to you.
Right.
So it's understanding the decisions our buyers are making at what point in time.
What point in time? That's interesting. That's interesting. And so whenever you're going through your customer discovery phase of asking your questions, those should definitely be on the list, or at least trying to get a sense of how they're making a determination. Like, can you walk me through, if you're going to be buying, I don't know, equipment or a restaurant, whatever. But I'm assuming too that that's a skill you're going to have to develop. I don't know if anybody could just pop right off the bat and be like, oh, I know exactly what questions to ask and in what order. So I'm assuming that, if you're doing this, still take time, do quite a few of these interviews.
Yeah, I think as you start asking people how they got to the purchase decision,
mm-hmm.
how they made the decision, you'll start to learn these things. The real challenge that I've found for people is to learn to recognize, are people comparing me to a competitive alternative or not? Right? They're not asking themselves that question. And that really does influence the information that we should be giving a customer at what point in time and the decisions that they're making.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. And so,
I'll ask my next question. Is that
you're
okay?
right on ahead, Mark. You're doing a great job.
Okay, good. Thank you. So now, if you believe what I just said, and that sometimes people make will-I decisions, sometimes people make which one decisions, now I want you to believe that sometimes people only make will-I decisions. So they never compare you to a competitive alternative. And if that's the case, they're not price sensitive.
Okay.
So if you can recognize the times when people are only making a will-I decision, they're not comparing you to competitors, then you could probably raise your price 10%, 20%, and it's not going to affect your business. I'll give you some great examples of that. Once you've walked into a movie theater, you look up at the board and say, am I going to buy popcorn today or not?
Sure.
Right? That's a will-I decision. They charge ridiculous amounts of money for that. Sorry about that. Driving out in the middle of nowhere, you see the sign that says last gas 75 miles. You got an eighth of a tank of gas. You get off. There's one gas station. They charge 3 times the price in town. Are you buying gas?
Yes.
Yeah. because
Yep.
there's no competitive alternative.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a SaaS software platform and people have bought your platform, whatever it happens to be, and then you want to sell an add-on or an upgrade, guess what? They can only buy it from you.
Okay.
They're not price sensitive.
Right. Right. So they're not price sensitive there.
We need to be thinking hard about, are our customers comparing us to competitive alternatives, or are they just saying, am I going to buy this or not?
Interesting. And so when you have to get to that fateful moment of putting $9.99, $500, whatever it is, it almost seems like you've gone through all those discovery questions, done your 1 through 5s, figured out if they're price sensitive or not, and how much, how many of those people. It almost seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but a stab in the dark. You just hope for the best. Like is there really a formula for it, or is it just like, this would make sense?
Yeah, it is impossible to price perfectly. Right? There are 2 rules to pricing that I'll give everybody here. These are the 2 ultimate rules if you ever want to price perfectly. Number 1, adopt value-based pricing, and that simply means we charge what a customer is willing to pay. Number 2, adopt price segmentation, and that means we get to charge different customers different prices based on what they're willing to pay. Now, if you could read every customer's mind and you could get them to pay what they were willing to pay, then you could do price perfectly.
Right.
But guess what? You can't read everybody's mind. You can't read anybody's mind. You can't get everybody to pay different prices. So you're going to end up grouping people into categories and saying, hey, I charge people in this region different prices than that region, or whatever it is we're going to do for price segmentation. There's lots of ways to do price segmentation.
Right.
But we can never price perfectly. So don't worry too much about it. What we want to do is get better and better. Put the stake in the ground and say, here's the price we're going to go out with. Your initial price level, unless it's ridiculously high or ridiculously low, is not making or breaking your company. Your initial price level is teaching you how hard it is to sell your product, how much value your customers get from it.
Right. And are there any tips, tricks, or suggestions you would have that I've heard different suggestions where it says that it's easier to drop your prices than it is to increase your prices. So if you're starting off, start high and bring them down. Would you agree with that, or how would you think about that problem?
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's a true statement, by the way.
Okay.
The reason it's not a true statement is, let's assume that you have a product that you're selling, and you said, hey, I've got this brand new product. I want to put it out there on the marketplace, and I'm going to put it out there at $1,000.
Okay.
How many people do you think are going to know your new product, know your new price, and remember your new price? Now, if you happen to be Apple or Netflix, everybody sees it and knows it. And so in their situation, absolutely, it is easier to lower a price than to raise it. But in your situation, your mom and your 3 best friends knew that you had a product out there and nobody's buying it. And you're like, well, okay, maybe I ought to bring it down to $500, right? Or your mom and your 3 best friends say, this is the best thing ever. And you say, awesome, I think I'll bring it up to $2,000. But nobody who hasn't looked at your product, seen your product, they don't even know you raise prices.
Sure.
So I'm not sure that that's a good rule to follow. Right. Now, in a way, I'll go ahead and support that rule, because I think most people price lower than they should rather than price higher than they should.
Sure.
And if listening to that rule makes you price higher, then that's probably a good thing. But that's the reason you should price higher.
Yeah. Understood. And that's interesting. So when starting off your brand new product, maybe we could take it on a direction of, maybe it's a SaaS based model, software as a service. And let me think about one. Maybe you're doing, I know it's pretty popular out there to do like telehealth, and maybe you have an app for having maybe PAs, nurses come to your place, so you don't have to go to the ER. They can just come to your house and take care of you. Maybe they can, go ahead and prescribe medications for you. Pretty awesome product. It's like the Uber for your healthcare in a way. And so if you're going through all like that complicated of a scenario and you're asking all your questions, you're really changing people's behaviors from, well, I was used to going to a facility, a hospital, and now I have this going here. Coming up with that price, like it's almost something totally new. Like whenever Airbnb came out, Uber came out, these were totally new things, new concepts. So whenever you're starting there, that's got to be even more of another layer of difficulty. So, but is the process still going to be the same? And you just got to do your best shot at it. No, you're not going to be perfect, but you got to make that leap anyway.
Yeah. So if I were starting a SaaS company, call it telehealth, any type of SaaS company, what I would be focusing on is creating an MVP, so a minimum viable product,
mm-hmm.
getting it into the marketplace as inexpensively as I can. Because even though I'm a pricing guy and I want people to charge high prices, don't get me wrong. In the beginning of a SaaS business, what you need are users. You need users more than anything else.
Right.
And so what if we charge $10 a month for this telehealth program, barely covers our costs, if at all, maybe we're losing a little bit of money. We get 1,000 customers, they love it, they write great reviews. And then the next year we charge $50 a month and we get 100,000 customers. Right? Because we built the brand, we built the reputation, the proof points, everything we need. Well, that was awesome, right? I loved what we just did. We just made a lot of money. A lot of companies look back now and they say, yeah, but I got 1,000 people only paying me $10 a month. I need to raise their price. So do you? I mean, you can, but do you need to raise their price? Because you just won 100,000 or whatever I said it was, right? 100,000 customers at $50 a month. They're like, well, who cares? Those guys bought first.
Sure.
But I'm happy to tell you how to raise those prices if you want to raise prices.
Yes.
But in the beginning, I think for a SaaS business, if we're pricing, how do I want to put this? We need to be getting people into our ecosystem, into our world. And that's the most important thing in the beginning. And when you are thinking about your SaaS product, your SaaS platform, what you need to be thinking about is, how do I win? By the way, the name of my second book is Win, Keep, Grow, right? It's about subscription. How do I win customers to get them into my world? How do I keep them? So if you've been in a transactional type business, what this probably means to you for the first time in your life is you have to care if people are using your product, right? So that's why we have customer success departments.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is called grow, right? I want to be able to grow my customers. And what that says is, how do I get a customer who paid me $100 last year to pay me $120 this year or $150 this year? Mm. And so there's 4 ways to grow a customer. But if you plan this out, then the key is I've got to get as many people into the ecosystem as I possibly can, because that's the people I get to go fishing for and get to fishing the pond I get to fish in and get to grow them over time and make more revenue from them.
Okay. So
this is exactly what all the freemium companies do. So think about Zoom and how you can get a free Zoom account.
Right.
Right. And there's nothing at all wrong with this. And it doesn't say that everybody has to go Zoom, freemium. But what they're doing is they're building enough people into their platform, into their pool, so they can now go fishing there and get some people to pay them more money to subscribe.
Mm. Interesting. So you had mentioned that you start with an MVP, because if you're just starting off, you just got some code or whatever the heck, but you got to get the UI, the UX, figuring out all the pain points, so on and so forth, and then entering that into the market. But yeah, you maybe start with a small circle, your connections, whatever it may be, and then somehow that grows. And you had mentioned that there were 4 ways, I think it was, to grow.
I said the number 4. I didn't give you the 4 answers. Would you like the 4 answers?
I would love the 4 answers.
So there are 4 ways that you can grow a customer in a SaaS business.
Okay.
First one, easiest one of all, is raise their prices. Second one is upsell. So if you've created good, better, best options, which every SaaS, go to any SaaS pricing page and you're going to see 3 or 4 options there. Right? And so they've got good, better, best they built. What we're doing is we're saying, come into my MVP product, my good product, And now I'm going to upgrade you to my better product. And then I'm going to upgrade you to my best product. So these are upsells, and I get people to buy more from me because they know that my product works. They love it, and they're willing to, they want more value than what they're getting from the smallest product.
Gotcha.
The third technique is called usage. If you've chosen a good pricing metric, and a pricing metric is what do you charge for? So you could charge by the user, you could charge by the gigabyte, you could charge by the click, you could charge by the dollar spent, the dollar revenue that we pulled through, like PayPal does. In the world of SaaS, there's thousands of things we could charge for. What are you charging for? And if you've chosen a really good pricing metric, what happens is as a customer of yours uses more of your product, they're getting more value from your product, and they end up paying you more money because we've priced based on usage.
Right.
So that's the third way. And then the fourth way almost feels like cheating, but it's called cross-sell. And so cross-sell is just, I built such a great relationship with this product. Here's another product that you probably also need and want, and you already love me, so you might as well go buy this one too. You already know I'm going to deliver great stuff.
Is it kind of like Apple came out with the iPhone and then they sell headphones?
Sure, that's a great cross-sell. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you're doing your second one, the upsell, and it's kind of like different, good, better, best, maybe some different tiers. When you're going down that one, should you be thinking of your different tiers like day one? I guess as you're coming up with your MVP, you figure out more about what your customers value. Is that then how you determine those different tiers? Like, okay, well, we figured out that, this means more than prior, and then this third tier means more than the second. It's just adding more value. So this is like a day one sort of mentality.
So I think the day one mentality is you're going to build a single product. You're not going to build multiple products, multiple versions of your products. You're going to build a single product, get as many people using it as possible. But here's a huge, huge hint. If you are a SaaS company, you had better be monitoring usage.
Okay.
There are companies out there that let you instrument your software so that you can see which features, which customers use how often. And you absolutely want to do that.
Okay.
Because over time, what happens is, just like we did that exercise earlier where I said, here's 10 customers and how much are they willing to pay? What if you said, here's 10 customers, what features are they actually using? And how much are they using? And now we get to see these people who have a really high willingness to pay, they're the only ones who are using this feature. So we're going to put that feature in our best category. And we're going to put other features where everybody uses it. That's part of the MVP. We're going to put that in the good category. So monitoring usage is a phenomenal way to help you figure out which features go in good, better, and best. It is hard for us to step back in the very beginning and say, this is what matters. Now, there's some things we could figure out. This is what matters, right? If you assume my best product is going to be for enterprise level customers, then I care about things like single sign-on and extra security and the things that we know enterprise level customers care about. Oh, more integrations, right? They want to integrate with everything that's already in their company. But there's also features that they care about that we haven't thought of.
Sure.
And that's what we want to be paying attention to.
Oh, I see. Interesting. And so it seems as though, so if you have these 4 different options, it's really what your product is and what your market, how it's structured, kind of then determines maybe which of the 4 you might be able to go down. Or maybe it's also, like if you were to do a cross-sell, you could be doing upselling and then cross-sell with another product. So maybe you can combine them too. So they're not mutually exclusive.
They are absolutely not mutually exclusive. I don't know if you've heard of the metric called net dollar retention.
No.
Net dollar retention is a phenomenal metric for every SaaS company to monitor and watch.
Okay.
And essentially what it says is, take all of the keep revenue. So let's pretend that I know how much revenue I made in December of last year.
Okay.
Right? So now I want to know from those same set of customers, how much revenue did I make in December of next year? So I don't get to add any new customers to the story. Any new customers I won, that doesn't go into this metric. And essentially, I take out anybody who churned, and anybody who upsold or paid me more, then I get to add that in on top of that.
Okay.
And companies like Zoom have 140% net dollar retention, meaning they're making 40% more from their customers this year than they did last year.
Wow. That's intense.
And that doesn't even count the new customers they win.
Right.
That's the key. So if we start watching that metric, net dollar retention, we're making sure we're not churning out customers. We're making sure we're upgrading, upselling, cross-selling customers. And then once you start watching that, then you say, well, where does the new revenue come from? And it comes from one of those 4 buckets, by the way. It could be more than one of those 4 buckets. It could be multiples.
Sure.
And your job should be to say, okay, we want to grow our customers. How are we going to how are we going to go do that? Right.
Interesting. Well, we also wanted to talk a bit about, about raising prices, and I guess, this would maybe be a good segue into it. Right now we have a lot of companies being hit pretty hard by inflation, consumers, how they're determining what to buy and whatnot. Inflation's been pretty high. It was almost 9%, I think, what the last report came out at, and whatnot. So I have some clients now that have been raising prices, but now they're still hesitant to continue raising prices. And then there's that just haven't. It could be a luxury product. It could be a run of the mill. You have a lot of competition, sort of an average product. For the situation that we're in right now with inflation, we could take any business for example, but what would you tell somebody who's maybe hesitant to raise prices, but their business really needs to, because they're just bleeding money right now. Their costs are going up and they're just not raising prices.
Yep. So the first thing, you implied some of your clients have already raised prices. So I would be really cautious about raising prices too often.
Okay.
I try to limit it to once a year, if at all possible. But let's pretend we're not in inflationary times.
Okay.
We don't have this 9% inflation rate going on, and companies have asked me, well, how do I raise prices? Should I raise prices? The number one reason we ever give when we're going to raise a price is our costs went up. That's the number one reason. Nobody wants to hear you want to make more profit. Right? And so the only reason is our costs went up. If you watch the Netflix price increases, not the first one, but anyone after that one, I guarantee you inside the email that you got, it says, we want to invest more money on better entertainment content. In other words, our costs are going up. Right? So it's the only excuse people accept. By the way, that's not a true statement. That's not why they raise prices. But that's beside the point. That's what they write in the email. And I'll teach you in a second how to communicate a price increase.
Yes.
But the thing is, before we would always have to come up with some excuse for our costs went up. Right now, there's no excuse needed.
Right.
Everybody knows your costs are going up.
Yep.
And so my answer number one is raise your prices. Just go do it. Because everybody out there says, yeah, I get it, prices are going to go up. Here is the only reason I wouldn't raise my price, or I'd be really cautious raising my price.
Okay.
And that is, if I know that my customers make a choice between buying my product and my competitor's product, and my competitor is not raising prices, then I would be cautious. But let me tell you by the way, if you're watching your marketplace and your competitor raises their prices, follow. Just go raise your prices. Right? Don't even think about it. Just go raise your prices. If you don't, it's possible they say, oops, didn't mean that, and they bring their prices back down. You're not going to gain market share. But if you raise your prices, you help the entire industry make more money. So we're in the business to make money, not necessarily kill our competitors.
Mhm.
So raise your prices.
Okay.
So then, if your competitors have not raised their prices,
Sure.
my recommendation is raise your prices. Watch your competitors, see what they do, and if they don't follow suit and it actually hurts your business, then say, oops, didn't mean it, and bring your prices back down.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Is there any sort of rule of thumb towards the timeline that you give it, that you say your competition hasn't, but then you do? Or is it more of like it depends?
Yeah,
Is
it
there,
very much depends on. I've worked with companies where it takes them 6 months to raise a price.
oh,
So, in those cases, you got to be cautious.
sure.
One of the other things you can try, if you have an industry magazine, industry newspaper, announce your price increase in the industry newspaper.
Okay.
This is pretty fascinating. If you watch the airline industry, they used to do this all the time. I haven't seen it lately, but maybe they do. Where you see one airline announce, Delta says, "Hey, we're raising prices 10%," and then the next day, American comes out and says, "Yeah, we're raising prices 10%." So this is what's called implicit collusion. Nobody at Delta called American and said, "Hey, you should raise your prices." Delta announced it. American said, "Hey, we're going to follow suit because we think it's a brilliant idea. And we don't want him to say, oops, we didn't mean that."
Gotcha. Gotcha. And so, okay. And so if you're a small business, say, go back to the restaurant example, should you go ahead and publish that, or should you just go ahead and just print new menus?
Yeah, in a small business, you're probably not going to say anything, do anything. Your customers, I eat at maybe 4 restaurants in my neighborhood, and
Yes.
you would think I know the prices of the products, and I don't.
Right.
And so just raise the price, and your customers probably don't know. And if some do know and they say something to you, it's my costs are going up. Right? Everybody knows food costs are going up dramatically.
Right.
So if I was a restaurant, I would just raise my prices.
Interesting. And then, is there any sort of rule of thumb about how much you should raise, or how do you gauge how much you should raise your prices?
Interesting. So you have a free pass to raise your prices 10% right now.
Okay.
Right? Because of inflation at 9%, you got a free pass right now to raise your prices 10%. If you think your competitors would follow, you could go higher. If you think you're an SMB and you have no market power, nobody's watching your prices, nobody's going to follow you, and your customers are truly making a decision between you and a competitor, not am I going to buy from you or not, then you probably want to stick with the 10% range.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I was thinking the 10% range. And
I would never, not never is not the right word. In today's world, I would not raise my prices less than 10%.
Okay. That makes sense. And then hopefully, knock on wood, inflation slows down and whatnot. But I don't know if who knows really what's going to happen, if it's going to slow down to 5, it's going to go up to 15, all these different variations could happen. So you're taking this aggregate psyche of America right now, that prices are just going up across the board everywhere. And so you can use that to your advantage, that this is why I'm increasing prices. Why? Because my costs are going up. Send that out and tell people that. And then, but in the future, you also should be keeping that in the back of your mind too. Like, should people be making forecasts out there? Like, well, if I raise my prices now and inflation is expected to keep on rising or whatever, maybe then in 6 months, I'm going to have to do another price increase, or another 12 months if you don't want to do it more than once a year. So is there any sort of future planning people should be keeping in mind right now?
I think you should have in the back of your head what you're going to do for your pricing, but most smaller companies make pricing decisions and implement them very quickly.
Okay.
You don't have to say, here's what we're going to go do in the future. I would absolutely not announce it.
Sure.
Certainly not say, hey, we're going to raise prices in the future. And there are times where you might build that in or put that in a contract or something like that.
Okay.
But in most cases, we're not going to tell people, hey, we're going to raise prices again in the future.
Gotcha.
The other thing that's happened on the 9% is I don't think inflation has actually gone up 9%.
Mhm.
What it is we look at the monthly or quarterly numbers and we say, hey, we're on a path for 9%.
Okay.
And so in truth, you're raising your prices higher than your costs have gone up so far.
Right.
And that gives you a little bit of leeway so that you've got another year to go raise prices again.
I see. So you're kind of you're staying ahead of it in a way.
A little bit.
Sense. Or at least you're not letting it eat you up.
Yes.
In a way. Gotcha. Okay. No, that's good advice. I guess with the last 15 minutes here, I was wondering what sort of last bits of information. Sorry, go ahead.
I have to tell you how to communicate a price increase.
Oh, yes, you do. Sorry.
Okay. Well, first off, let's talk about how to raise prices in a SaaS business.
Okay.
Because this is, if you've got a SaaS business today and you want to raise prices on your current customers, first off, I want you to break your customers up into 3 different buckets. And they happen to go win, keep, and grow, but let's just break them up into 3 buckets.
Yes.
You have people who have never bought from you before. If you raise prices on them, they don't even know. So it's totally okay to raise prices on new customers, people who haven't bought, and you're going to watch your win ratio to see that you're not hurting yourself because you raise prices on new customers. Okay. Everybody else is a current customer. So are we going to raise prices on current customers? Imagine that you have a set of customers who love your product. They think you're the best thing ever. They get so much value. You could raise their prices on them and you're not going to churn out. Imagine there are people who hate your product, right? They're using it, but they're stuck with it. And it's like, and you raise prices on them. That's an extra excuse to figure out how to get rid of you.
Right.
And go find a new product. And then there's all sorts of people in between.
Sure.
So what I typically do is recommend to companies, if you are monitoring usage, or you can monitor how much value someone's getting from your product, go to the top tier, top 20%, top 25%, and raise their prices, and nothing's going to happen. Go to the next 25% or 20%, raise their prices, and now you're starting to watch how many people churn versus how much additional profit did I make in the price increase.
Okay.
And then you can go to the next level. Pretty soon you get to the point where the churn hurts more than the price increase helps. Stop raising prices on people below that.
Okay.
And so here's the analogy I'll give you. You pay $20 a month to go to the gym. I don't know, right? But you never ever go to the gym. You think someday you might. And then you get the email and they say, hey, we raised your prices to $25 a month. You go, I never go to the gym. I think I'll just go ahead and cancel my gym membership. But prior to them raising your price, you never even thought about it. In fact, Netflix, if you're assuming you're a Netflix subscriber, Netflix raised your price 2 or 3 months ago. Prior to that price increase, you just paid the Netflix bill. You never thought, well, should I get rid of Netflix or not? You just paid it. I guarantee you, when they sent you the email that says we're raising your price $2, you stopped and asked yourself, am I watching Netflix as much anymore or not? Am I watching more Hulu or Apple TV or Prime or something else? And so you consciously made another decision. Am I going to stick with Netflix or not? Right? If you weren't using Netflix much, you would have churned out. And that, by the way, that's why Netflix lost so many subscribers on this last price increase. Because they had a lot of competition, where in previous price increases, they didn't have much competition.
Wow. Right. And so it's weighing out that how many people are going to leave. And if you can segment out your customers, then it's almost like you're testing it in a way.
Yep.
So like, oh, this was too far. Like you said, you can always reverse it. can always go back.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. So now, how do you communicate a price increase?
Yes.
So I created this strategy or this technique for SaaS type businesses. So I want to raise price on a customer who knows the current price. I have to tell them I'm going to raise the price. So how do I do this? Step number one is you blame your costs. Right? My costs went up, have no choice. Step number two, remind them of all the value you've added over the last year or however long it's been. Hey, we just added so much more value. We're going to continue to add more value. It's a great product. Step number three, remind them that you haven't raised their price for 3 years or whatever it's been. Right? If it's only been a year, I'd skip this step. But if it's longer than that, remind them you haven't raised their prices. And then step four, if you can, do something nice for your customers. You may recall Netflix's first price increase cost them 800,000 subscribers, and their stock price went down 67% or something like that. It was the worst executed price increase ever. The second price increase they did was perfect. It was amazing. And so they essentially did these first three steps I gave you.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth step, what they said was, hey, we're raising prices, but we love you. You're a loyal customer. So we're going to hold your price constant for 6 months.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then 6 months later, they sent you a note that said, hey, you remember we raised prices 6 months ago? Well, now it's time. We're going to raise them on you too. And you felt better about it. You didn't like it, right? But you felt better about it.
Yes. Right. And I remember reading good publicity about it. Like, oh, hey, Netflix is willing to do this for you, for those people and whatnot. Like, I remember reading positive articles even about it too. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Oh, okay. So that's the formula. Then
it doesn't have to be in that order, but it does. You do want to touch on those, assuming that they're true.
Sure. Okay.
Except for the cost one. You will use the cost one.
Yeah. Especially right now.
We'll go find a cost that went up. I don't care what it is.
Yeah. And they're going up everywhere. Supply chain issues too, causing such large amount of inflation right now. Good. Okay. Well, then what I was hoping we could maybe wrap up with is if you had any sort of quick hit tips, any sort of or just a quick review, what can you give our listeners as here's a little bit extra flair?
Oh my gosh. Let's just choose one. What do we want to choose? Let's do price segmentation real quickly.
Sure.
Because I told you that there were two rules. One is adopt value-based pricing, and the other is adopt price segmentation. Mm-hmm. And price segmentation means charge different customers different prices based on their willingness to pay. Assuming you can estimate customers' willingnesses to pay, then how do we do price segmentation? And there tend to be 4 different techniques that you can use. 3 of them are essentially the exact same product, charging different prices. And the 4th one is creating different product portfolios. Okay. Let's do the first 3 real quickly. The first one is you could do customer characteristics. So tell me something about the customer that helps me understand their willingness to pay. And so the movie theaters, you can get in less expensively if you're a child or a senior. Right? Just tell me something about the customer. In B2B, it is pretty common to charge companies or customers in the US or Europe higher prices than we do in Asia.
Okay.
So just tell me something about the customer. Second one is tell me something that I can learn at the time of the transaction that helps me understand a customer's willingness to pay. And so, for example, baseball stadiums who charge lower prices on rainy days than on sunny days. Right? It just makes sense, doesn't it? Why wouldn't you?
Sure.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
In the B2B world, we talked about volume-based discounts. Someone who's going to buy a ton from you tends to be way more price sensitive. Or what if someone says, how fast can you get it installed? I need my implementation done in the next 2 weeks. That's a great indicator that they're not going to be price sensitive at all. Third one is called hurdles. Hurdles are what are some hurdles or behaviors. What's a hurdle I can put in someone's way so that they can prove to me that they're price sensitive? And my best example of this is a coupon. Some people use coupons, some people don't use coupons. The people who use coupons think it's worth finding, clipping, storing, shopping at the right store, buying the right item, getting it out at the cash register to redeem their coupon. They think that's worth 50 cents. And some of us don't think it's worth 50 cents. So people who are price sensitive use coupons. People who are not price sensitive don't use coupons. So it's just a great example of a hurdle we can put in someone's way to say, prove to me that you really are price sensitive. The last one, the fourth technique for price segmentation, has to do with your product portfolio. And in your product portfolio, you could create different products for different market segments. So which market segments have the highest willingness to pay? Let's create a custom product for that group and charge them more money, and they'll buy.
Gotcha.
Then the other thing we can do in product portfolio is inside a market segment, we can create good, better, best products, because the people who love the product the most, they'll end up buying the best. And the people who are scraping to get into the product category, the most price sensitive, they buy the good.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, that was a fire hose for you. Sorry.
Good thing this thing's recorded. Go back and take more notes. Well, good stuff. Well, Mark, thank you very much for hopping on and chatting with me today, and for all our listeners. Are there any sort of books you'd like to mention for our listeners to go out and read a little bit more about the topic?
Well, you mentioned all three of my books, which is great. Let me add just a little flair to each one, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The second book, Win, Keep, Grow, is really all about subscriptions. How do you run a subscription business? And I've always come from transactional type businesses. And so when I went to study subscriptions, I was blown away with the differences, with the nuances of running a subscription business versus running more of a transaction or traditional business.
Sure.
And so if you only come from traditional businesses, this thing is just jam packed with ahas and what's different and how does it work. And I was thrilled writing that book.
Oh, wow.
And then the last book I just published is called Selling Value. And everything that I do, when I think about pricing, everything I do is how do I put myself in the shoes of the customer and understand how they perceive the value of my product. Right. And what I found is salespeople who should know how to do that don't. And so I wrote this book to really say, look, I've got this skill that helps me understand how people perceive value of products, how they make these decisions, what information they're looking for. And so I put all of that into a book targeted at salespeople or people who work with salespeople, so that we can help them be more successful at actually capturing the value that we're delivering to the marketplace.
Right. Gotcha. Well, again, thank you so much, Mark, for your time, your knowledge, your wisdom. I learned a lot. I've already got 3 pages of notes. So. But anyway, all right, Mark. Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for joining. And everybody take care. Thanks again, Mark.
Thanks, Will.